Nigel Farage yesterday unveiled his flagship plan for mass deportations if he becomes Prime Minister, calling it Operation Restoring Justice. He said he would rip up the UK's post-war human rights commitments to deport migrants and strike deals with their countries of origin in order to return them home. Senior reform official Zia Yusuf admitted that this could involve paying the Islamic fundamentalist Taliban to take back migrants from Afghanistan. So it was quite a dramatic moment, got a lot of coverage yesterday. Jane, is it a step too far? There seems to be divided opinions on this.
Well, I think the key word is in the whole thing is plan, because it's not actually a fact, is it? It's a plan, and
not a lot of detail on it.
A lot of politicians come up with plans, don't they, before they're elected, and then when they get in there and they start having to deal with the civil service and looking at the budgets and the restrictions, things go a little awry. So I think a lot of what he's suggesting wouldn't come to pass. And I think actually a lot of what he's suggesting wouldn't go down that well with the British public. I think a lot of it would. I mean, certainly something has to be done. But I think the elements where maybe somebody that's been here illegally, say, for 20 or 30 years, but actually they're in the system, they've got a wife and kids and they're living in the community. I don't think people would want to see them thrown out after being in the country for 30 years. Yeah. However, the more recent arrivals, the people that we don't know who they are, obviously, if you look at the small boats, it's 76% young single men coming into the country. I think that is of the main concern, just in the way that it's affecting communities, etc. But a lot of what Farage is saying actually isn't that unusual. So in May, 9 other EU countries did an open letter to the Council of Europe saying that the European Court of Human Rights is a problem for them, and the way that the legislation is being interpreted in terms of migration.
And Labour have admitted that as well. David Blunkett has said that.
I think saying that
today,
we either need to go back to the drawing board on that or come out of it completely is not that big a leap.
Yeah. Well, I mean, successive governments for the last, since we were discussing Brexit, so we're going back to the early 2010s, have been looking at this, and various plans have come up,
and Brexit
nothing has come of it.
Largely was to do with immigration.
And we don't have another election, all going to plan, for another 4 years. I mean, I think a lot will depend on how people feel in 4 years' time, whether they feel their life has improved, because at the moment, clearly, a lot of people feel that life is pretty rubbish, and migrants are clearly being put in the spotlight as being the reason for that, which I would question. But it's that thing, how does it land? I mean, how did it land with you, Nadia?
Well, the thing is, I am actually really worried. I know a lot of people just dismiss Nigel Farage and his sometimes rantings. Yeah. But when I look at America now and I look at the horror story that's unfolding there, and I know a lot of people here agree with what's going on, people being dragged out of their homes, illegal immigrants that maybe have been working there 20, 25 years, have built up a life and a home and they pay taxes and all of that. For me, it feels like Trump is Nigel Farage's, sort of like man crush kind of thing.
Well, they are very close.
They're very close. And it feels like he's following his playbook. And, you know, it's the oldest trick in the book, isn't it, for a politician to create hate about a group of people to distract from all that they're not doing. And it feels to me like he loves to throw that red meat out. And it's like we should be, like you say, Kay, we should be looking at what really... Yes, it's a problem, you know, we can't have everybody here, but we have to come up with a solution for that, and successive governments haven't.
Well, we sort of have to find a middle ground, don't we, rather than the pendulum going all the way over here.
To blame our lack of a good education system, lack of good mental health services, lack of good... the NHS struggling, to blame it all on migrants is very dangerous. And I think when you look at America and you look at how the Democrats kind of just passed him off as a joke all the time, Trump, and here we are. He's breaking down the Constitution. He's doing whatever he wants. He's rounding people up. Look at how he sent people off to El Salvador. I just think we have to be really careful.
Yeah, and we are a divided country. I mean, if you look at the polls...
He got voted in by people who felt they were not listened to. Their concerns were not being listened to. And he played to those people in the way that Nigel Farage is. I mean, Trump, you know, Nigel Farage went to a very posh school, grew up in a very posh area, not far from me. Trump was a very wealthy, you know, grew up in a billionaire's home.
Yeah, they're not the man of the people that they purport to be.
We know how you're feeling.
Kelly?
And that is my concern about Nigel Farage, is that people won't be reading the detail and thinking it through. Because we like to listen to punchy headlines that resonate with where we are at that time, and that's how we ended up with Brexit. So I want people to stop and think, yes, this is what he's saying. Have a read of the detail. When it does come out, look at it. How is that actually going to work in practice? How's that going to affect your life? Is that going to change things like benefit systems and social services requirements? How is that actually going to affect your everyday life? Before you then, in 4 years' time, give him your vote. So I want people to start thinking in advance about the effects that if this man gets into power, what could that actually mean for you?
Well, I mean, at the moment, and I'm not being disrespectful to them, it is all blah, 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 because we are so far from a general election. Where we are sitting and how people are feeling then will determine how they are going to vote. But it's whether or not it sows the seeds of division. And a divided country is very rarely a happy country. And I suppose that would be my major concern.
Supporting who would vote reform tomorrow if there was an election are the people whose lives are very much affected by a lot of the policies. You know, it's all very well for us to sit here. We probably don't. Our lives are quite rarefied. You know, our lives are not particularly affected by the effects of mass immigration.
Yeah, but there is an element of misrepresentation, I have to say, because, I mean, I heard a lot of stuff yesterday from various reform representatives saying that we're going to send people back, so we are protecting our women and girls. I'm a woman and I have girls, and I don't need to be saved by that. I don't want other women going back to Afghanistan. There's 800,000 rapes and sexual assaults take place in this country, and they're not taking place all by migrants.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about
but that was an important part of their thing.
On infrastructure, on jobs, on housing crisis, etc. That, not that.
Yeah, but that was their chat yesterday.
That
was their chat.
Yeah. And it's deeply racist. It's suggesting, like,
anyway, I am obliged.
The rapists, you know.
I am obliged to read out the statement from Reform UK. The government's approach of indifference towards illegal migration is what is fuelling division across the country. Reform has set out a bold, workable plan that combines a legal reset with national-scale enforcement. Only Reform has a serious, workable plan to deal with the crisis.